a Heroes Welcome podcast. Welcome to a Heroes Welcome podcast. My name is Maria Laquerre-Diego. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a registered play therapist supervisor.
And my name is Liliana Baylon. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a registered play therapist supervisor as well. And we're here with
Rachel. I'm Dr. Rachel Altvater. I am a licensed psychologist in Maryland, DC, and Virginia, and a registered play therapist supervisor. And yeah, I just like to sprinkle myself all around in life and in the field. And I'm excited to share more with you.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining us, Rachel.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I just want you to know that for anyone, because this is the podcast, they're not going to see your background. But even when you say sprinkle, I was like, yes, that's even your background.
Yes, I have rainbow polka dots behind me. So I really do sprinkle myself everywhere, even on the wall right behind me.
I love that. I know we're going to get to your introduction, but since we're talking about your wall, was that a COVID background wall that you've created, or was it like pre-COVID, you just live with sprinkles?
Yeah, it was during / post COVID, I guess, depending on the time frame. I moved and finally obtained an at-home office. Before, I was just like on my bed with a really dark headboard.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think I think I just needed to go from one side of the spectrum to the other. So yeah, but it just kind of became its own thing. I don't even know what my original idea was, but it is just a signature background now.
Yeah, I recognize it when like videos and your YouTube videos and stuff. So I'm like, oh, I've seen her like that.
Take pictures, have it like as a nice little backdrop. It's
playful and fun. Yeah. So Rachel, give us a small little brief introduction for those that are listening and that maybe have not crossed paths with you yet.
Yeah. So I will say my area of significant interest and specialty is digital and virtual play therapy. So ultimately the difference, digital is incorporating technology-based toys and sessions is, I think, a very brief method of explaining that. And then virtual is teletherapy, right? Just meeting with individuals online. And my interest was sparked during my dissertation time, that time that I've repressed a little bit. But yeah, I was mindlessly scrolling on social media one day, and someone had posted something expressing being pleased that their child was playing with toys. Like, I don't know if it was dinosaurs or blocks or something. And at that time, I'm still in training. And I thought, hold up, if we're being taught that these toys are the method of children communicating, and this parent is expressing surprise that this child is playing with toys that we're learning are the toys that I would say we are to use, but like maybe the standard toys that are used is a better way to phrase that. What is going on with the field? Are there areas that we aren't as familiar? So I started to question a bit more, and that morphed into my dissertation topic. And I was interested in looking at how technology impacted play therapy. I interviewed play therapists to see what they were noticing, how comfortable they were, what trainings they were receiving. It was so eye-opening and passion-filled. I know that a lot of times for people, a dissertation or a thesis process, it's like just this big looming cloud. You just have to get through it. You will get through it. And like find something you're passionate about, because then it doesn't feel like a dread. And that's what happened. So that then I connected with a phenomenal play therapist in the field, Dr. Jessica Stone, who started off as my mentor and is now a very, very dear friend. And she already has been doing a lot in the realm of digital play therapy. She founded digital play therapy and really took me under her wing and said, let's do things in the field, right? Like, I'm not on a lone island anymore. Let's do this together. Yay. And so we did. And this was around 2016, 2017. And so then, as we know, several years later, the pandemic happens.
Right.
I've already been doing work in the digital and virtual realm, and it was met with a lot of resistance, understandably so. And then the pandemic happened and things shifted. So here we are. And, I'm happy to share more, but that is kind of where I started and why I have grown the passions that I have grown and continue to expand.
Yeah, I love that. And you did say it was met with resistance as expected. Why do we expect that? I will say, I find that those of us in the mental health field who advocate and help people deal with change and know how hard that can be, but know the growth that is on the other end of change, we are very resistant to change. Is that still the case? Is that still resonating? And why is that?
Well, from a psychological perspective, the nervous system, when confronted with unfamiliar situations, gets a little panicked, right? So logically, we can say, yes, change is inevitable. Yes, this is the natural direction of us as a species. We have transformed to where we are today due to all that has occurred in the past, which is a series of change, right? But each time something new is introduced, it is always met with resistance or reluctance, always. If we think back to CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, when that was introduced, psychoanalysis of the time, I had conversations with them, I know this, obviously. They told me, no, I'm joking, but there was pushback, right? And this happens every single time. I remember earlier in my learning, EMDR was kind of shunned, and now it is gold standard. So this is the natural progression. But as I was mentioning, really our nervous system is, I think, driving a lot of that. And when we feel unfamiliar, we push away from it, right? That's just a natural human response. It doesn't matter how educated we are, how much we logically know that when our nervous system is activated, it takes over. And so I think that's a short answer to a complex experience, but I think that's a human pattern.
I love that you're naming this, right? Because then we have this expectation that as mental health therapists or play therapists, we know this. And this is across cultures. We are living with coexisting with so many generations. So a lot of seasoned therapists, which I'm considered one of them already. I don't know how I feel about it, but because we're coexisting, I think that's why we have this fear. We can call it resistance, but I think at the end of the day is fear-based on the nervous system of, do I like this? Do I know how to do this? Would I fit in? Would you accept me if I do this? So there's a lot of internal dialogue that happens, tied with a lot of negative cognition of, am I enough? Can I do this? Will you accept me because of my age, because of my background, so on and so forth. So what will be one little tip of gentle, what he said, I'm going to say push, but no, gentleness, I'm enjoying us. This is not different than theories, but also it's not different than generationally. This is what we go through, and our field is changing. At the end of the day, that's what it is. So, and we can all coexist as you are sharing this, but how do we name it? Not just for our clients, which they also have a hard time when we're working with families of, my child is just using technology. But as therapists, how do we help therapists welcome this part? How do we help them justify in their notes, in their insurance, in their panels? How do we help them? That was
Thoughts? No, I got so many thoughts. That was amazing. So helpful. Great points. I have quite a few thoughts. Hopefully I remember them. So one is compassion toward yourself. I think that, we compare ourselves to others, period. That is another normal human experience. no matter how seasoned, no matter how qualified we are, there still are some insecurities because we are human beings, right? It's normal. So I am all about normalizing the human experience. I am all about normalizing the uncertainty, the imposter syndrome, the areas where we can grow. And I think recognizing that you are right where you, I don't want to say should, because I don't want to should all over the place. Okay. But right where you're meant to be.
There you go.
It helps ease the process of sitting in unfamiliarity and discomfort. And I think especially for people who have done things a certain way for a while and it works, right? Like, why fix what works? That tends to be a common statement or feeling. True. Yeah. And if you're doing what works, continue and expand your mind, right? Like you don't have to say, well, this is the way we're going, so this is what I have to do. If it doesn't resonate with you, it doesn't resonate with you. That's something I emphasize a lot in my training. It's not about changing your style, right? It's just about understanding more to enhance your offerings. And if this is where children are, which is what play therapy says, we meet them where they are, it's important just to educate ourselves. So that's one thing I think is normalizing this process. And especially for a lot of like, well, not really everyone, beginning professionals, I think want to, oftentimes let people know I can handle this. I got this, even though internally they're like, do I? Right. And seasoned professionals are at this place, I think, and I can own up to some of this, are at a place where like, I got it down. Like, I know what I'm doing. And if I learn something new, like, oh, I got to start over again. Right. And that's not really the case. Yeah. And not everyone is going to feel that way, but just again, to normalize this experience, this process. A way that I start a lot of my trainings is by encouraging people to engage in some self-reflection, which is what our field just does so beautifully all the time. I know we all love it, but recognize our biases, right? Technology is a culture. It is a socio-cultural shift, right? And it's a culture that differs from our own. So, and even if people have grown up who are listening, who've grown up in the digital age, more so than maybe some of the seasoned professionals, it still isn't a different place than kids growing up today, right? Yeah. So there still is a shift. There's always going to be a cultural difference, a generational difference. So I think something that also comes up a lot for people is, well, I'm not going to do something where I lack competence. Yes, don't, right? Because our ethics
say not to.
Like, right. So that makes sense. We're not going to do things where we feel a lack of competence and comfort. And I think sometimes that inhibits people from leaning in and learning more because they're like, well, I can't learn this. I don't know this. I suck at games. Some I'm great at, okay, where I put a lot of like time and I'm like really passionate about, but a lot of the games I play with kids, like the gaming, it's not cute. Okay, I have to get in my own head, but I emphasize this because people look up to me and like, oh, well, you're training on this, like, all these things. I suck at the games, especially the first person shooters, obbies. I am like, so obbies are obstacle courses. Like I fall, I'm clumsy. Like I've always been clumsy. My aim is terrible. I do what's called spray and pray. You just like close your eyes and hope that something happens. Okay. Like you're not alone. You don't have to be an expert in the play, right? That's the child job. I'm air quoting, right? But that's their role in the space. So I think also recognizing within ourselves, like, I'm not going to be skilled. That doesn't mean I'm not competent. Yeah. And, or like, I don't know this technology thing. Like I can't figure out, insert some social media. I don't know. Right. Like that's okay. It can be something as simple as allowing your child or your client to bring in something from their technology world. So that's some of my thoughts on what you shared.
I think that's really interesting because I don't think there are many other play therapy theories that were like, once you've reached a point, now you're an expert at insert play therapy here. But there is this like, there is that for digital play and the use of video games and gaming in play therapy. There seems to be this like, I need to reach an expert level of gamer to then be able to say, I use this in play therapy. Unless I'm wrong, I don't know, like another one's not coming to my mind where I'm like, oh, yes, once you reach this, you're an expert CBT play therapists?
I don't think it's the model. I think it's the expectations of either our feel as you're becoming seasoned, or as you are moving to the next phase, either as a consultant, supervisor, or trainer, right? There's this expectation that you have to be the expert. If you are the expert, then you can do this. So I love that you named that, because I'm like, no, actually, no. For me, and tell me if this fits for you. If I'm considered an expert, is the expectation that I know it all.
Oh
And I
God.
know for a fact that I don't. I keep learning every day.
So the more that we know, the more we realize what we don't know. You know,
Hmm?
the less we know,
Yes,
the less we know, the
100%.
more we think we know.
100%. And I mean, and the three of us, and we are lifelong learners, right? We are those that are actively going and seeking out new information and new, new techniques and new theories. So that doesn't apply to everyone, perhaps, that is listening. Although I would encourage you to. I mean, I feel like once I stop learning, that's it, right? Like that is put the flowers on, we're done. So I do want to also say, like, yes, there's a generational piece to this, right? So I mean, I remember when dial-up was a thing and introduced to my household. Oh yeah, I've been around the block, right?
Oh
Oh yeah,
my
my
God.
brother picked up the phone to disconnect me, like all out wars that happened.
Dramas are coming out.
Yeah. So I grew up with parents who still very much like do not understand technology. I am the person who goes over and sets up their new TV because it has apps and is not a cable box anymore. My son was, I think, like 2 years old and like switched all of my parents' technology to Spanish. My husband had to come over so that we could re-switch it back. But my daughter in pre-K was given a laptop and a login and a password. Like their school is technology based. They have Promethean boards, smart boards in their classroom. They're doing YouTube, brain breaks. Like this is their language. And my understanding of play is we're to learn their language, right? They're not to teach us. Like we don't have to be the expert in their language. They're the expert in their language. We just need to be curious and open to learn that language.
Oh, yes. And I keep thinking about culture. It keeps coming back to cultural, right? So if we want to provide cultural humility, it is important to recognize this is an area of culture for us to make sure that we are being mindful of. A lot of times we can't help but see things through our perspective. And for play therapy, a main focus is to try to see things through a child's perspective and to assist them within that perspective. If we are coming into the space with our own values, our own norms, our own beliefs from our culture surrounding technology, then we're kind of inhibiting their process, right? If we say, no, that's not how we're going to play, right? Like let me back up. A lot of times I hear people say that, children are addicted to the screens. And I think addiction is a very strong word choice. There can be unhealthy use. Absolutely.
Sure.
And when a child comes in and the parent or caregiver or another professional says, like, they're struggling with this, they cannot engage in play in the session, like figure it out and quote, fix them, right? How can we figure things out if we don't lean into their world? And maybe they're leaning into this world a bit more because they don't feel understood or cared about in this world. What about this space are they being so drawn to? Why are they gravitating to these experiences? But to back up again, so with, understanding our culture, if we come in and say, well, this is how we play, this is how I played growing up, this is what's important to me, and like, there's a problem over here with the way that they're playing, that goes so against the field. Like, if we really think of the core play therapy components, digital play therapy fits beautifully. If we think of child-centered, it really fits quite beautifully. And I think it's a lot of times in talking to professionals, it's more about reconceptualizing things and reframing things to understand what we're doing versus sitting in a place of, I don't know, right? When we start to engage in play therapy, I can own it. I think this is a shared experience, but I will say even though I think we, okay, but I entered into, play therapy practice and thought, what is going on here? I'm under supervision. My supervisor's going to think that I don't know what I'm doing. And I just sat there uncomfortably like, I need to be doing something, right? And then I finished my first placement, and so many of the families were reflecting on the growth and the progress and like the help. And I thought, what? Huh? Like, great. What? So I think it's the same thing here with incorporating digital tools is I'm not familiar with this. I have no idea what's actually going on in front of me, but there's some change going on. I don't know how. So the more we lean in and understand the intricacies and their world and try not to impose our values and preferences into the space, I think that will really enhance our understanding and the overall willingness to lean in a bit more.
I love that.
Like
I love that.
right? Because as you were talking, I was like, oh my God, you're inviting us to, when you said meet them what they are, is you're inviting us to be loyal to the client versus loyal to the system. Either if it's a model or if it's like, what is it that is going to work for the client? Come in with a curious mind, but meet them what they are. So I love that invitation that you just did.
And I love the frame that it's the culture, right? I would say like between the three of us, we each have in our play therapy worlds too, we have like this designated culture that we are kind of championing for, right? So we've got digital culture. I could say a lot of the same things around pop culture and the use of pop culture in play therapy. That is the language that the kids are speaking. Like, you know, if someone comes in and is like, ew, David, like, I get it. I can connect with that. I know where we're headed. Or, you know, processing grief through like WandaVision and in the MCU, right? Like that is a shared language. And Liliana, your work with bringing in the cultural aspects for, especially for immigrant families, and those that are not native to the United States necessarily. But I love that we're able to kind of view all of them as cultures because I think that gives us a little bit more room to be humble and to be not the expert. Right?
Yeah. And you can not be the expert and still have competence.
Yes.
And I think that sometimes feels a bit incongruent for people and they're not really quite sure how that's the case. And I just want to say
expert. Like we throw that word around, right? And there's like this expectation to be an expert. Well, like what does that actually look like in these landscapes that are ever changing? Right? The new technology is old, 4 months later. How can we keep putting that label on of you need to be an expert in something that is rapidly changing and forever will continue to kind of change?
Precisely. And I think it's recognizing that it is evolving.
There you go.
Right? We're like that expertise is the openness and willingness to continue to evolve and learn in whatever way resonates with you and your clients. And I'm going to continue to reemphasize, you don't have to incorporate all things. If you're not interested in going onto a gaming platform with a client, that's okay. You don't have to do that, right? You can modify the information to fit you and your practice and your clients. By completely closing the door, though, that can inhibit the client's progress because it can inadvertently signal to a child, oh, everything about me is welcome here except for this aspect. And so how is it going to inhibit the relationship, the openness? I see a lot of people saying, well, virtual and digital play therapy doesn't work. And for some, it might not. Okay, absolutely. Everything is going to work for everyone. That's why we have so many different options, right? Absolutely. And I wonder how many times the case is that this is shut off accidentally, inadvertently, and it creates barriers in the space and blind spots.
Absolutely. One of the fundamental pieces of play therapy is that the toys are their language. If you are not allowing the toy to be invited into the room, even if it's different than what your playroom offers, isn't that just like shutting off their language?
Yep.
Yeah. Especially when you add the piece of like, I remember coming to the US and I didn't have access to like technology. For crying out loud, my TV was something that I got in the secondhand store and it was like black and white. And it was like I had to go move the antenna.
Yeah.
dial, change the
Yeah, oh, yeah,
channel,
I was the control as the child. I had to
Right?
get up and change it.
the antenna.
Angled in the direction that it needs to go. Like, where is the best signal? And then it's like all
For all
go.
of you, I just want you to know that Rachel is like moving exactly how I used to move with the antenna. So
My
we're
hands
having
are
this
moving.
moment.
And in there,
I
don't move.
can't.
Don't move. You got it. Don't move.
But even as I work with the migrant population or newcomers, are with the evolution awards, right? We're calling them newcomers now. As we're working with the newcomers, a lot of them come and they come to these offices and they're so excited because they get to play with something or exposed to something that they have never been. Yet they go home and then shame for the parents of, I cannot give you this. So also that awareness of, let's introduce them and name it, how we're using it as a tool to process, to, whatever it is. And then going home, like, what can we do at home? How can we help parents with the shame of, this is not accessible to me. I don't know how to speak your world. And what do I do with it? So that comes to the family play therapy per se, or the collaboration that we do. As you two were talking, I was like, what would that look like? Me talking to kids and me talking to parents of, and this is not feasible right now. Oh,
Yeah,
I
I
just
think,
sadness.
yeah, I mean, I think of digital tools as just another toy, right? It's an additive, it's not a replacement.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, another distinction that's really important to be made aware of.
Yeah.
That if it's not an option, it's not an option, right? And they might not resonate towards it in the session because of that, or they might be very curious. Oh, this is something new, and this might be a special therapy experience.
Because even as you were thinking, I was like, oh, I will have to invite the parents to join in so that they will have a common language, so that they will have a shared experience. So that when they go home, they can still talk about it and bond over it versus me just doing it along with the child, right? So it's that combination.
I was thinking about that, Rachel, when you were talking, like, do you do kind of parent consultation, parent education really is what it would turn out to, of like, this is what this game is like, this is what this system is like here. I know you've got a lot of like safety information on your YouTube channels and stuff like that. And, there are guidelines and stuff, but I think for some parents, that generational like disconnect, right? Like they didn't grow up in this world. I grew up under like, those relationships aren't real. You don't know those people in real life, like that old school thinking. So I'm imagining a lot
I want to pause here, and we get Uber and we get DoorDash and we get all these things. So whatever we were afraid of, we are not afraid of next. So come back.
Yeah, don't get in strangers' cars, but unless you take you to your destination.
Yep.
But I'm wondering, like, right, because there needs to be some enlightenment and education for the parents to feel more comfortable, to not be an expert, and maybe not even be a gamer, but being able to feel more comfortable with the language that their child is trying to use.
Yes. Gosh, so important. I'm so glad you brought that up. It is so important for us in play therapy, period, to front load the conversation, to provide psychoeducation about the process. Because how many times are kids going to express they feel like they're, quote, just playing?
Right.
And really, that is the work of therapy for children in play therapy, for them to experience that, right? To quote, just play. And from an outsider's perspective, who isn't leaning into that child's perspective, there's a lot that is missed, that can be missed. So we want to provide education to caregivers about play therapy, period. And then when we incorporate digital tools in sessions, we want to also front load the conversation by adding more about incorporating technology-based toys in sessions. And it's synonymous. It may appear that we are, quote, just gaming. It is another method of play that the child is using as a medium, truly, if we're thinking of artistic materials, to express, to process, to make meaning, to have control, all of the things that are so core to play therapy. Here's the thing. When I first started play therapy, and I was mentioning like, oh my gosh, I actually am helping. Wow. Okay, cool. Same thing with incorporating digital tools, right? Like, oh my gosh, we're quote, just watching YouTube. Huh? Like, and when I first explained play therapy to caregivers, I was like, I promise this is helpful. I'll just trust the process. They're telling me to. So I'm telling you to. We're going to do great. Okay, great. And of course, I didn't say it that way, but that was the message. And, you know, when we are not conveying a message in a confident manner because we lack that confidence, I will own it. I lacked that confidence. The caregiver is going to pick up on it. Would you want to go to any provider that's like, I believe in this? Like, maybe, probably not. Like, you need to know your stuff, right? So it's about how we present the information. If we are unfamiliar, if we are uncomfortable, inevitably other people are going to pick up on that. So when we front load the conversation with incorporating digital tools into sessions, we want to make sure that we are at a place where we really do understand and trust the process and are able to articulate it in a way that can be digested by the caregivers and can ease the anxieties. Caregivers are already anxious bringing their children into therapy in one way, shape, or form.
Yes.
Inevitable, right? Like there's something wrong, quote unquote. There's something going on with my child, and I am worried about them. I feel insufficient as a caregiver, as a parent, and being able to support them. And there's a lot of really heavy feelings that they're sitting with. Being able to nurture that space and then provide clear, compassionate education about what's going on in the therapy space will ease those anxieties. They will jump into the process with us, and then change will occur.
I love that. Do you talk about the fears that parents might have, right? Addiction to gaming, or you're just playing Xbox with my kid for an hour. What are some of the fears that the play therapy field or the mental health field has around incorporating digital play?
The first that popped in my head is how it impacts the brain and body. I think there's a lot of unfamiliarity because this is a relatively new area in the grand scheme of things. There's more and more research coming out, of course, but there are concerns. How does this impact attention? How does this impact brain development? How does this impact social relationships? So there's a lot of concern. Yes, valid. And I'm wondering how much of this is an evolution, right? I mentioned that word earlier. We evolve as a species, or I might not have used that word, but I thought about it, and I was talking about kind of transformations, but we evolve as a species. And so inevitably we're going to evolve with the digital realm as a part of our collective. How that looks, who knows? Is that going to change our eyes? Maybe. Is that going to change some of our brain structure? Maybe. Is that bad? Maybe. Is it good? Maybe. Right? So I think there's so much uncertainty coming back to that as well. And that uncertainty, I think, is unsettling. And then all of this research, which, by the way, make a little tiny side step. Let's be mindful. I'm saying this in a loving, compassionate way. Let's be mindful of what we're digesting and the reality behind what we're reading.
Yeah.
I see a lot of times things are shared because people read headlines and things sound a certain way, and they are clickbaity on purpose. And there's mass sharing, and there's this terrible thing that happened, which happens. Yes, absolutely. There are areas that need to be addressed, but they share and share and share, and it's an opinion article.
Yeah.
Or we talk about research and we're not actually looking at like the sample size and, the implications and limitations. And so people, I think, start to move forward with these absolute statements and aren't really doing the deep dives.
Sure.
And having a well-rounded perspective. We also tend to search for things in a skewed way.
Yes.
The way that we type the message into the search engine is going to ultimately encourage what pops up.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
then there's something called confirmation bias. I feel this way. I'm looking it up this way. Oh, this verifies it. This validates it. It must be true. I will also say one other thing about some of the research. I had been looking into social relationships in VR. I wrote a chapter for an upcoming book, which is so exciting, mental health and virtual reality, to be continued on that. But I wrote about the reality of human connections, of virtual human connections. And a lot of the early research seemed to express that there is a disconnect socially in these spaces. What I was recognizing, though, by actually analyzing the data, the people who were speaking about the experiences were outsiders. They were people looking at people who were looking at the screen. They had no idea what was really going on the screen. And a lot of the participants, the direction of like the research, because they might not have been the direct participants, but like parents or caregivers might have been the ones that are the participants. They were being interviewed about their kids. That's what I mean. But they weren't in that space. Once it started to shift, and the people who were on the screens were actually the ones that were being interviewed or, you know, received inquiry about their digital connections, we learned much different information. So the research looks like initially there are social concerns, and then it shifts to actually there aren't social concerns. It's because the perspective has shifted, but that's not clearly addressed unless you really sit with the research. And honestly, how many people are doing that?
Bless you and Liliana for taking those projects on, because no.
Yeah. So I think it's just be good consumers of the research and recognize where your biases lie and how you might be confirming or refuting those biases as you move forward.
I love that. I love that. And one of the things that always kind of makes me giggle a little bit when the parents like, they're on their screens too much. I'm like, how many hours a day are you on a screen, my man? You know, because we're on a screen now. Work is all computer based. I have a computer in my pocket through my cell phone. You know, it's like, oh, I can see the concern, but are you also looking at yourself? And you know, that's a whole different conversation about modeling and parenting and all of that stuff, but acknowledging that we also consume digital media constantly, and somehow it is just frowned upon for children, but is normal daily life for us. A little double standard.
Yeah, and there's a lot of unfamiliarity I keep coming back to. And so there is concern, how is this impacting the kids? And there really isn't a clear answer. There are some answers that are coming out.
Sure.
But I think that's really where the concern is because this is so new, we are in, like, is ground zero the right word to use? I feel like that sounds like
not anymore.
But
we know. Yeah.
We're in the foundational stages. That's a better way to say that. You know, and so there's a lot to learn, and I am all for being the ones who jump on board to try to help create positive outcomes as much as possible, right? Like if we inhibit things and shun them because it's bad, because we don't know about it, we're not helping the cause. You know, if there is concerns with safety, let's jump on board and see how we can put different parameters in place for it to be a safer place. If there's unfamiliarity, let's jump on board and learn more about it so we can teach other people. And that's very much where I am in my life and within the field.
Thank you. As we are closing down, first of all, like, thank you for being here, for educating us, for giving us all this framework, organizing it for us so that we can have a framework on how to work with. I'm wondering, how can our listeners find you? Do you want to be found?
I'm moving in the shadows.
Online only.
I'm not actually real. No, I'm totally joking. Yes, I am very approachable. I'm very friendly. I love to connect. I'm very active on social media. I have professional social medias. My personal is kind of also transformed to like a personal professional social media. So feel free to just type my name in any search engine and I'll pop on up, and I'd love to connect with you. I do also have a Beacons page, which is similar to Linktree. I think Linktree tends to be a little bit more of a familiar platform, but Beacons is the same. And it's Beacons, BEACONS.AI/Docvater, DOCVATER. And it has all of my socials and other ways you can contact me, publications, upcoming trainings, things of that sort, all in one beautiful place.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. We will include some of this information for all of you who are like me, is like, wait, that was too fast. We will include it here. And make sure that you reach out for consultation, for questions to Rachel, because she has just so much information. Please attend her training. And thank you for being here, Rachel.
Thanks for having me. I love this. Thanks all for joining.
Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Bye.